Okay, so welcome. We are so excited that you're here, and by we, I mean myself, Amy Seiler, Middle School Math Content Specialist, and
Nicole Marshall, High School Math Content Specialist.
We are very appreciative of all of you being here and giving of your time to work with us on developing our essential curriculum for secondary math for grade 6 up through Algebra 2. So this evening, our main goal is basically to make sure that everybody is on the same page so that when we come back in 2 weeks on Monday, February 22nd, I believe, that we all have a common understanding and we're ready to roll right into the work then as of the 22nd. So what you see up here is our transfer goals and some essential questions that are DOI, what's that stand for? Division of Instruction. Too many acronyms. So our Division of Instruction team here at Central Office developed a UBD model or template that we use every time that we develop professional development. So Nicole and I pulled from that. One of our transfer goals there is in support of the Washington County mission. Instructional staff will collaboratively and intentionally plan for all learners by maximizing integrated organizational structures, professional learning communities, and an understanding-focused curriculum. And our job here, our main focus is on that understanding-focused curriculum piece. And our essential questions that we hope to answer today and ongoing throughout this process is, what is the evidence of an understanding-focused learning? And how are system goals, our school plans, curriculum instruction assessment, how do all of those things connect? So that's where we're heading. For this evening, we have kind of 5 main things we'll do. We're going to do some quick introductions to make sure that you know everybody, especially within the team that you'll be working with, but also around the room to have an idea of who everyone is. We will review the work of the original task force and what they have done and are doing right now, because their work directly affects our work. And then we will spend some time speaking to what it is we will be doing very specifically. Quick team building toward the end, and then kind of launching us off into the beginning of our work here this evening at the end. So the first thing, some quick introductions. If you would go around the table and give your name, the school that you're from, and one hope and one fear about being part of the Washington County Secondary Math Parallel Task Force. And then, so my poll everywhere has 2 questions to it, and I can only open 1 question at a time. So once you've done that, you can click the link, and the first question should come up that I've activated is your hope. So just name your hope, whether it's 1 word, a short phrase, name your hope. And once I have a quick, that everybody's got their hope in, I'll activate the fear, and we can put that in and kind of get a quick picture of the feelings of the room here tonight. Okay? So go ahead and take a moment around your table first, and then click into the poll everywhere.
You can start.
So again, as you're putting in your hope, if you can do a single word or a short phrase, that's most helpful when we're creating the word picture needs to be.
My hope is to
I also hope it has such a consideration that Oxford will already have, especially from
my fear is, I guess, having enough responsibility to manage this process will give us a chance to maybe
yes.
Well, fear is that we don't reinvent the wheel from stuff that we already have. And use our time productively.
You click on it, right?
What is
You click down here. Robin, I'm gonna switch you over to the other side.
I was on a phone for the past 25 minutes. Forgot everything.
mine's like having a
She is quite a That's another thing when I break my fingers for the end of the
She only wants to use one. I use
I will cover you as well. I will pull
Has everyone entered a host? Has everyone entered a host?
Okay, because my computer's being
Does it switch around? Okay, so folks must still be writing things. And I hear some people say they're splitting up my words, so now it doesn't look the same. But maybe we could form it back together. We hope there's a better math curriculum that's cohesive, developed by a team. It's clear, insightful, coherent. We have lots of great words up here for our hosts. Okay, I'm going to open up the fears, which is going to close this one. So does anybody else need to put something in here before I close it? Okay, and if you're still on your screen, you shouldn't have to click the link again, I believe. It will change to fear for you, yes?
It's called technology. It should have fixed that for you, shouldn't it? It should have. I'm so used to that.
Here we go. This will be easier for me. Instead of using this.
Oh, yeah, you can. It's gonna split it all out. Whose fear is getting thin? And tell me how you're doing it, because somebody wrote something and it split it up, so the word thin is in there. I said, whose fear is getting thin? And tell me what you're doing. Myself. Spreading too thin. Yeah, I think that's.
That was easier.
Do it on your phone.
Yeah.
Oh,
Knowing, disappointed.
everybody entered their fear? And again, I understand it might be splitting up your phrases, but it captures the most of the same word. Time is our largest word here, and that's certainly understandable. So we'll kind of walk through timeline a little bit and what we're looking at this evening. So you see technology. Don't want to disappoint. Transitions. Okay, well hopefully as we go through this evening and kind of go through the timeline and things a little bit, perhaps some fears will be alleviated, and certainly Nicole and I are here to chat with you too further about any conflicts or things that might come up along the way, and to help find solutions to any kind of hurdles or roadblocks that we might come to along the way. So thank you for doing that, and we were able to capture that and come back to that. Let's see here. Let's carefully go back. Okay. All right.
Okay, so that brings us to why you're here. The work of the task force, different than the work of the original task force. So we called you the parallel task force. We didn't want to name it the second because Amy and I see this work being, if not as important, maybe even more meaty than the original task force and what they're doing. So just as a quick review so that we're all on the same page, you're familiar with this shot, the work of the task force. They developed the overarching county goals with the work of principals. They developed the overarching long-term math transfer goals. So they're in the blue circle. Keeping standards in mind, looking at PARC PLDs, and then they're ending with the development of the cornerstone task, overarching EUs and EQs. The bottom arrow is where you all right now fall. Our purpose and what we will be doing is moving directly under those transfer goals and linking to all of those transfer goals, overarching EUs and EQs. We will be aligning our standards into units and then packing those units, the model of those units with EUs, EQs, and then sample assessments, sample tests, and whatnot. Whoops. So you are the green box being here. Okay. Just so that, again, we're all on the same page to get us through all of this, we want to recognize the common language that was introduced to you all in August. We've been using it since then, all the way through from principals, lead teachers, DLs, down through teachers. We want to make sure we're all using the same language, and what we speak of here is what we talk back at our schools so that we understand when we say EQ or essential question, it's all meaning the same thing. UBD, we are following the UBD process. We will be using and formatting our units in a UBD template. That is the process we are choosing to use. K-12 mathematic transfer goals, those have been completed by the task force. They've been introduced to all teachers for feedback. We've taken feedback and they have been finalized. K-12 overarching EUs and EQs were introduced to all teachers, and we're rolling out the draft cornerstone task, and I say it's still draft even though we have people vetting, because their feedback will come in at the end of the year, and that will go ahead and either finalize rubrics or the wording of the task or how it's set up. So all of that has been completed or is in the final stage of completion. Our work here is to start the essential curriculum. And as we have it defined in the common language, an understanding focused curriculum is what we desire. It's what I believe when I heard for many of the hopes as I walked around, your desire, whether it's the articulation between one course to the next, or what's best for, I heard it other ways, teachers and students, and I think that all goes under the understanding focused curriculum. By definition, We have it stated in our common language, and the link, if you choose to go back and through and see the common language, it's there for you so that you have easy access to it. But this is the definition that we have. It's designed around complex transfer goals that require understanding. Students know how and when to use and adapt content to meet performance demands. An essential curriculum, an understanding-focused curriculum includes priority standards, cornerstone tasks, and comprehensive arrangement of supporting standards. And that's what our work will be, is that comprehensive arrangement. So again, like I've said, we are using McTIE's processes and structures. McTIE is a resource. We will be following the UBD process. And we have a short video to introduce. What that will look like.
I'd say if I learned one thing over the years, it's to plan backward with clarity about the end results. And not to fixate on actions or activities unless you're clear about the intended outcome and you've thought about how you're going to know if your actions are successful. As a teacher, my early years, I would plan activities, what I'm going to do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, without having clarity about the outcome. As an administrator, I had many things on my plate, and I would rush to action plans, often prematurely before the problem was clearly defined, or people that I had to work with had in their heads what our goals were. So in the loosest sense, this is backward design planning, having clarity about the end in mind or clarity about the problem you're trying to solve before you rush to action or solution. One manifestation of backward design applied to education is the importance of being clear about the long-term outcomes that our teaching or our curriculum is meant to achieve. In the United States right now, the Common Core standards for English language arts have been particularly clear on this point because they've identified as the overarching goals of literacy a set of what they call anchor standards. The anchor standards are performance-based. They define what we want students to be able to do with reading, with writing, with research, and speaking, in order for them to truly be college and career ready. So planning backward just around the Common Core standards, at least for English language arts, suggests that we don't fixate on just covering discrete skills that might be in 3rd grade or 8th grade. And then we don't fixate on standardized tests as the end, because they're not. The standardized tests are imperfect measures of some things that can be tested in a large scale. The end, if you will, for the ELA standards, as described in the anchor standards, is students' ability to read and comprehend increasingly complex texts, to write with a purpose and an audience, to persuade, to inform, and to creatively entertain. And so we need to keep the authentic ends in mind and not get caught up in the short-term measures, like testing, or the discrete skills that are means to ends.
That's not that one. Okay. All right. We'll mess around with that. So that music was leading into my summary of that. So to summarize, we don't want to get caught up in activities or actions. We want to make sure that we know exactly why we are doing what we are doing with our students. We don't want to fixate on the PARC or standardized tests or little components for our students. We want to keep that end goal in mind. And so this group here is working together, holding each other accountable for all of that plus more. So we want to make sure that we really, 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 can't stress that enough, are looking for what's best in student interest for student understanding. Park plays an important role, but Park cannot and will not be the do-all, end-all. If it leaves in 2 years, 3 years, our curriculum still needs to stand. And so we want to make sure that we are doing that.
Okay, so with planning with that end goal in mind, like Nicole summarized and Jay McTighe spoke to, the task force started out by reviewing the front pages of each grade level or high school standards, and from that, along with some other documents, developed our county-wide discipline, so mathematics will end up being pre-K to 12 transfer goals, and that is when Jay McTighe speaks to having the end in mind. He speaks to those transfer goals, and that being part of stage 1 of the UBD model. So again, I know that we presented these, the task force presented these to all secondary math teachers in November, and we spoke to the overarching essential questions and enduring understandings just here in our January 19th professional development. And we need to make sure that all of you, just to do a quick review of those, kind of where they came from, what they represent, what they look like, what are the characteristics of those. Again, we just want to make sure that everybody in this room has a solid understanding of those, because you will be using those within the units that you arrange with the standards. So while the video was playing, I distributed transfer goals, and it has matching EUs and EQs that go with them. If you would kind of pass those out. And within your teams, I'd like you to take a look at those and just kind of pulling out again. Again, I know that you've seen them, but just kind of having the opportunity to read them all on one page, and kind of just seeing what jumps out at you. What do you see? What don't you see? Kind of generalizing a little bit about, reminding ourselves about the characteristics of what a transfer goal is and why it's used. And again, the characteristics of essential questions. So as you talk as a team, if at least one of you would click on the Padlet and start to populate there, I believe we have the left-hand side is the what do you see, and the right-hand side is what don't you see. And again, not looking for very specific details so much as more generalized things that we can generalize into characteristics of transfer goals and essential questions. So if you'll take a few minutes in your teams.
So now it's just updating.
Click OK to everything.
I had to sound it.
Okay. Okay. So what are we going? What are we going EUs are signs of good instruction. We did it all. If a teacher does all of this, if a student, are able to do all of this. Things to look for things to cultivate for strong
There's gotta be some project. Oh, yeah, totally. Yeah. Right now, I just finished. I have 3 geometry. And on here. She couldn't cut the line. She did the rest of it. And I'm just teaching to these ladies. Science of
Now it's me. You should be typing. You have the keyboard. Yes, what don't? We don't see this.
I think we also made
We don't see specific
where there is it's crazy right now. Like I feel like one standard is in there like 15 times.
We don't see how to do it all.
Take about 1 more minute to finish up your conversations and post any other generalities of what you see or what you don't see, either specific to transfer goals or the set of questions. let's take a minute and just, you might have to read from your screen because they're kind of difficult to read on this screen, especially if you're toward the back. But and some of these are more specific to the transfer goals. Some comments are more specific to EUs or EQs, and others are kind of even more general yet. If we were to think specifically about the discipline transfer goals for just a moment, what are some kind of generalized characteristics of a transfer goal that we could pull out of here, or if you have something new to add? Think about just some general characteristics of this discipline. So for us, it's mathematics pre-K to 12 transfer goal, and so you have 4 of them down the left-hand side of your sheet. What are some general characteristics, whether it's math or not, what are some general characteristics of a transfer goal?
Our team talked about them being mathematical practices.
Okay, in our case, they pull out the mathematical practices. Other things?
They all state that a student independently does something.
They all state that a student will independently be able to do these things over the course of time. Other things about a transfer goal?
It encompasses more than just one skill. I mean, it's very broad in what it's.
Okay.
Yeah.
They are very broad. I didn't hear what Stephanie added.
Higher order.
They're higher order, very broad. Okay. I noticed a couple of other items up here, and this could apply also to our EQs and EUs as well, was they're not specific to the standards. They're not a specific grade level, a specific standard. They really are, they span the grade levels, they span over time. Okay. Trying to think which order I want to do this in, so I have to click back and forth. So in the PowerPoint, I have a link, if I can get back there, on the next slide. So the link for the discipline transfer goals provides you with an article you may have seen earlier in the year, and some distinguishing characteristics. I think for the most part you have hit on a lot of those. They are long-term in nature. They can develop and deepen over time. So what a kindergartner looks like experiencing or engaging with these 4 math transfer goals will look different from what a 6th grader looks like, from what a 12th grader looks like engaging in those transfer goals. But it is doable by all of them at their own level. At their levels of understanding, but it does develop for each individual student and deepen over time. They are performance-based, which is why they ended up being more based or solely based on our math practices as opposed to the standards for each individual grade level. The application of them can occur in new situations. The transfer requires thoughtful assessment of which prior learning applies. So strategic thinking may be required. It's not just your plug and chug kind of thing for math. The learners must apply their learning individually, right? That we had said that it's something they have to be able to do independently on their own is our ultimate goal as students continue to grow and become more sophisticated in their understanding of mathematics. And transfer calls for the use of habits of mind, and in our instance, I think our math practices are some of those habits of mind that we develop in our students. So I think overall you've kind of pulled those generalities from our math practices, and that is our hope. So going back to the Padlet for a second, switching to then the idea of essential questions. What are some things that you noticed about essential questions? Generally speaking, it could be generally speaking again, whether it's math or not.
user-friendly language.
Okay, the user-friendly language, we could use them with students. Other things about an overarching essential question.
Open-ended.
Say again?
Open-ended.
Open-ended, okay? They are open-ended, not just one correct response. Other things about essential questions. How would they be used? In only one lesson? How could they be used?
Can be done all at one time, and also these are things that, because they're not content, I mean, this is what they're gonna have to do for the rest of their life.
Okay. So these are things that they would have to do for the rest of their lives. I saw somebody somewhere up here with a comment about college and career readiness kind of things. You have to know how to get unstuck whether you're in math class or not.
Yeah.
Right? So it might span not only mathematics, it might span multiple disciplines. Some of the questions could do that. So in addition to spanning multiple disciplines, they're not designed for one lesson in particular or one specific piece of content or skill. They are designed to span more than one unit, perhaps, more than one lesson. And in the case of some of our questions, it might span beyond mathematics. Okay. They are not, overarching essential questions are different from more course specific. We will design your team, our team right here today, you all will design more unit specific essential questions to go along with what's here. But what you see here are not course specific. So that's the difference between an overarching essential question as well. So again, another resource for you to follow up with that if you're ever like, oh, I forget, or need to review something there. There's another resource here, maybe. And again, I think that you hit on quite a few of these. They are open-ended. They typically don't have a single answer. And just one thing to note is an essential question has most of these characteristics, but doesn't have to have all of the characteristics at one time. It's thought-provoking, intellectually engaging, could spark a discussion and debate, calls for higher order thinking, points toward important transferable ideas within, and it says, and sometimes across disciplines, like Alice mentioned. It could raise additional questions and spark further inquiry, requires support and justification, and recurs over time. So again, whether it recurs from unit to unit, from lesson to lesson, from geometry to algebra 2, from mathematics to science, whatever that may be, there are questions that could recur over time and be revisited again and again. And the rest of this brief article does have some additional examples that we may be able to look back on later in our work for some help if we need it. So again, just kind of reviewing those pieces that you have seen those, but just kind of making sure that we, again, have that background of what a transfer goal is, what an overarching essential question, enduring understanding is. I think it might have been mentioned up there, but you'll notice an essential question must have at least one enduring understanding to go with it. So what does a student need to understand in order to be able to answer this question? And an essential question might have more than one enduring understanding. But you can't have an enduring understanding without a question. Does that make sense? So we can go back over those things a little bit more when you get into your units and you're developing more EUs and EQs to go with your units. Questions about just big picture, transfer goal, EUs, EQs before we move on. Again, this was the work of the task force initially started it. We brought these to you in November and January for feedback. They've been tweaked based on feedback, and elementary is using them as well. that's kind of where we're at with those.
I just want to reiterate that the work you all are doing is going to be dependent upon these. Like, you're going to have to know the transfer goals, because every unit you create is going to have to be linked to these transfer goals, and then you'll have to pull in EUs and EQs. So this is the foundation to that aligning and creating those units. Again, like I had said after the video, it's not a matter of us going back and saying, I did this great activity, I want to include this in, and where am I going to include it? That's all by the wayside now. We're kind of starting from scratch with this process, and this process starts with the transfer goals, EUs, and EQs. So again, it is going to be hard work. There's going to be hard questions asked of you, just like there will be hard questions asked of both Amy and I. So for clarification purposes, that's why this might seem like it's a sit and get, but this is foundational. Like, this is extremely important for moving forward, is that you're able to speak to these and understand them and how they're used.
So the other piece, and kind of the final piece that the beginning task force is currently working on right now, is Cornerstone tasks.
So Cornerstone tasks were introduced to you all, the draft Cornerstone tasks, in January. We will be vetting those tasks coming up within the next 2 months. Teachers have volunteered to vet. Some of you might be those teachers. Cornerstone tasks are a piece of an assessment that we as a county are developing for our students. So Cornerstone tasks fall within that authentic task. They're performance based on an authentic context. They are going to be required within the county so that we have that common assessment, and they are going to assess transfer goals so that we can see a student's growth from their 6th grade assessment of transfer goal 1, perseverance and problem solving, all the way up to an 11th grade assessment of transfer goal 1, perseverance and problem solving. We can see that growth. So that's why the Cornerstone tasks is set as sort of that foundational piece, but it is not the do-all, end-all of assessments by any means, and I want to make that very clear, and hopefully you heard that and have heard that, and if not, we want to say that. There are traditional assessments. You have your tests and quizzes. Those are your skill checks, your exit tickets. That's what tests the skill of your students and how well they know those specific standards and the math that they need to do with it. Then in addition to that, you have your performance tasks, and that's the application of those skills. And these are the units, or these are the components that we as teams will be creating within those units. So it's not going to be a lesson plan for a teacher. It's going to be a bundle of a unit that provides resources and sample assessments, sample tasks, sample components that a teacher can use, and then have their freedom and their creativity to develop the lesson around that, knowing that they will be planning with the end in mind as well, either one of those being that end.
Okay, the part you've been waiting for, right? You're like, okay, get on with it. So the parallel task force, right? This is the team here sitting in the room this evening. So we're going to kind of do an overview of the work, certainly provide some time to answer questions, and then go from there. So again, I do want to take a moment and show this visual one more time, now that we've kind of reviewed what the task force has worked on, and then connecting again to exactly where you all will come in. So the task force has worked on, we just reviewed the long-term discipline transfer goals. Mathematics has 4 of them that we have created as a whole, secondary. And our mission, of course, is our creativity and curiosity piece that is part of the Washington County mission. Principals helped us to develop that piece a little bit further. And then within each of our disciplines, we have overarching essential questions and enduring understandings that you just saw connected to each of the transfer goals. And then here, kind of cut off in the bottom, but is the task force is working on cornerstone tasks, one common assessment per grade level or course for this coming school year. So once they have that finished, so your job then coming into this is, that's where they're at now. Your job now is you are divided by course. You're seated in this room by course, whatever that may be. You will be taking the UBD process and we'll be using the template as well for stage 1, 2, and 3. And we will fill in the pieces that go with that, inclusive of some additional tasks that that may not be in common across the whole county, but that teachers can choose from, and they'll be aligned to particular units that they go with. Part of the work for you all too will be to take the cornerstone task that has been created for your particular course or grade level, that's been created by the original task force, and part of your job will be to place that accordingly within the arrangement of standards that you all create. So there you are. There you go. Okay. So a brief overview of our work, and the calendar, I think most or all of you have probably seen at this point, but there's a link on this slide to the calendar itself. Here in the months of February and March, up till our goal is that by spring break, and if your particular team doesn't take until spring break, then you won't need to use all of the meeting dates that are there. But for now, we have scheduled every Monday, we've scheduled a space to meet in this building. That can be hard to come by sometimes, so we went ahead and scheduled a space to make sure that we have that. And your very first priority for each of your teams will be to arrange the standards into units. So the beginning of our meeting next time, we will start off with giving kind of some guidance on how to begin that process and to go from there, but arranging your standards into cohesive units that make sense for kids. We gave some leeway this year for all of you in terms of no updates were done to the old scope and sequence. We gave you some leeway to kind of move units around or move topics around if you wanted, and based on your knowledge of mathematics and how students best learn math. So we are looking for you to incorporate some of those things that perhaps you've tried this year and things that have worked and that you feel are what's best for students. In April, we have one whole group meeting scheduled at this point, and during that time, you will come back. Or in the month of April, you'll be working on stage 1. So stage 1. So after you have your arrangement of standards, and we're all on the same page, stage 1 are your desired results. So for each unit then that you have created of standards, after you have them arranged, you will have here will be the standards for that particular unit. You will choose the appropriate transfer goal or goals that go with that unit or that best fit for that particular unit. You will insert the corresponding essential questions and enduring understandings that go with those transfer goals that you chose. And you have option at that point to also add some additional more content specific essential questions and enduring understandings that fit that unit as well. So you might be adding to that. And then also completing, students will know and will be skilled at. What do they need to know and be able to do for this particular unit. So the month of April, really determining within your own course-alike team, you'll determine when and where to meet, how often you need to meet to dividing up tasks, whatever that may look like. You have technology, we have use of Google, and you can work together and from separate buildings just depending upon your schedule, so you have some flexibility in the month of April. When we come in together, our goal will be to trade our work with other groups and to kind of see where we're all at, how are we moving along, do you have ideas for ratios and proportions, 6th grade team if we're the 7th grade team, and kind of doing some revisions and getting feedback from a different set of eyes, which is always helpful when you're the one kind of in the work. Sometimes we lose sight of other things around us, so we do want to make sure and provide opportunity for others to look at the work and offer feedback as well as we go. So once stage 1 then of each unit is completed, then we'll go back through stage 2. So in the month of May, you'll be focusing then on specifically stage 2 of each of the units. So stage 2, our little graphic, if we're splitting apart the UBD template, is your evidence or the assessment pieces. So the one cornerstone task that's being created now per course or grade level will be inserted where it is appropriate. So that's one thing. You all will determine where that best fits. And then on top of that, we are asking you all as a team then to also provide some additional options for teachers of additional performance tasks. And as you saw in the graphic here a couple minutes ago that Nicole reviewed, one of the main differences between a performance task and a cornerstone is that it's not necessarily in common across the county. You at your school may determine that, hey, we all want to do this in our Math 8 team so that we can talk about it at CFIP, and you may not, just depending upon your school setup. So the performance tasks have some more flexibility and more options for teachers, but part of your job will be to research and find some really great things that align with our transfer goals, in addition to the content of that particular unit. So, and again, we have another date in May where we'll come back together, bring those pieces and exchange and kind of see where we're at there. We would love to have multiple performance tasks and things for each unit. And if by the end of May, I know one of our fears, right, was time. If by the end of May, not every single unit has multiple performance tasks to choose from, that's okay. I think we'll be able to add to that in the summer work and be able to pull in some additional folks as well in the summer to add to that piece. But it is absolutely imperative that by the end of May we have our standards arranged into units, and that stage 1 is rock solid, completely finished, ready to go. And that everybody in this room can speak to it and speak to why it was arranged that way, why it's what's best for kids mathematically. So that's our biggest thing. I think our essential curriculum will continue to evolve. We'll certainly be able to add to stage 2 as we go. Which then though brings us to summer. And Nicole and I had shared with you, especially those of you who asked, if you're not able to commit to the summer at this time, that's not a requirement of the Parallel Task Force. Certainly we would love to have any or all of you, but just so that you get the full picture, in the summer then we will begin to populate stage 3. Stage 3 is the learning plan, and overall, generally speaking, stage 3 will be left to the individual teacher. It is not our goal to take away the creativity and just that personal touch that all teachers have in their classroom. It is not our goal to give out lesson plans, to go with each unit. Certainly, some topics or things we recognize that teachers are asking for help with, and there may be things that some model lessons that we provide or different things like that. So in this section will be maybe some samples. It'll be kind of the best resources to go to for that particular unit. And as we continue to further develop it, whether we get this far in the summer or not, but we will continuously be working on stage 3. We would really like to incorporate pieces for differentiation. Here are some great things for struggling learners if they're not at grade level at this point. Here's the best of the best resources here. Here are some great options for enrichment for students who are meeting and exceeding where they need to be, and providing those things for teachers. It is not our goal to provide 800 different links for teachers to go to, and we know that teachers don't have time to look at 800 different links to pick something that may or may not be the best. So the job in the summer of those teachers who choose to come in the summer will be to truly find the best of the best that promotes student understanding in mathematics. So that'll be, and then again, as I said, I think stage 2 and 3 will continue to develop and evolve even throughout next school year. But when we leave at the end of May, early June, we want teachers to be able to walk away in the summer having their arrangement of standards done into units with stage 1 completed, so that they know what to expect when they come back in August. It's not our intention to surprise anybody in August with this new arrangement. So teachers will have that when they leave, and then over the summer we'll continue to populate those other pieces and provide professional development as we go. So, would you like to do to kind of give a visual, I guess, of what we're talking about? We have two links that you can explore a little bit, and one example is actually already well developed, being worked on right here in Washington County, and it's our elementary science curriculum. So if you want to take a peek at that.
And this is what Amy and we've met with the teacher that was putting this together, and we really liked the model. For our mathematic minds, we like to see it and see what it looks like with math. And so that's why we have that second link. So our model will very closely follow the elementary science and how it's laid out, and how you've got your units, and this is what we envision for a teacher to be able to go in and sort of click on the links to select the units. That unit then is laid out in that UBD template, the process. We're going to provide all of these for you all as you start building them. And it's just it's already populated in there for the teacher so that they have the unit already set up for them. Okay.
So in terms of the science, like Nicole said, we put this sample up as far as its actual formatting and things, kind of our idea of what it will look like with links and things available for teachers. You'll notice at elementary, they are still working with teachers to determine the science K-12 transfer goals that will go in there. But you'll see kind of the model and the template that we'll use as you go down. Stage 2, they have some ideas for teachers of different performance assessments. And then again, this is not, in stage 3, it's not here's every lesson for the unit. There are some sample lesson seeds or lessons along the way. And they're continuing to populate that as well, but just to kind of give you an example of what it could look like.
And then looking at that through the eyes of math and the math standards, Alexandria, Virginia, they have sample Algebra 1 that you can look at. So don't pay too close attention to the format, but more the idea of the content and how they have it broken up. Again, structured in that same UBD, loosely showing transfer goals, the enduring understandings, essential questions, going down to the suggested resources. And like Amy said, we don't want 10,000 or a lot of, we want the best, highest quality resources that teachers can easily go, yep, this is sound, I've got 1 option, 2 options, 3 options, they're sound, they're going to help me, they're going to help my students.
So again, the Alexandria, Virginia example, they don't have it totally in the UBD format, so to speak, but just for a math example, we thought it's a really good kind of overall picture of kind of what we're going for. So you'll see they have stage 1, desired results. It's overall set up there. Stage 2, their assessment evidence, and they have a performance task noted, at least 1 for each of their units with a rubric. And then they also have additional performance tasks listed as well with some additional prompts, and may give some ideas for that other evidence, which can be more of your testing your skills and procedures that we also need to do in math. And then, there's more assessment. And then again, their stage 3, they titled it the learning plan. They give some ideas, suggestions for scaffolding.
The vocabulary, they touch on vocabulary in it, which is good.
Yeah, if you continue to scroll through, different things are there for different units. This one here, this one has a different set of suggested resources, so and I think I'm not sure, earlier some of the fears that were mentioned, it said technology, and I'm not sure if that meant your personal use of technology, or if that meant how we're incorporating technology for students into this. But I think a lot of the technology piece and some ideas, since our students will be one-to-one, will be further developed and come out of our summer work with Stage 3 and providing some really good resources for teachers to use technology to build understanding of math in the classroom with the technology piece. So I think a lot of that side of the technology will come in the summertime. So please do feel free to explore one or both of those samples, just kind of as a big picture of where we're going. Okay, wow. A lot has happened, right? A lot of information being thrown at you. Take sort of a break and play a card game, okay? So the card game, you do have a deck of cards in your baskets, and
you can close your computers at this
yes,
point.
if you want to put those down for a moment.
Please make sure that you bring a charged device through to these meetings, because we will be doing all of our work online. All of it will go into Google Docs.
So if somebody would like to start shuffling, they are brand new decks, so they'll need a good shuffle. Go ahead and remove the jokers and any like direction cards or any extra type of cards there are. Remove the jokers and extras and give them a shuffle. So we're going to call this game Prove It. Okay, as I describe the game, you might know it as something else, but we're going to call it Prove It. Okay. So I'm going to explain while somebody's shuffling. So once the cards are shuffled, somebody will deal all the cards out. And the person whose birthday is closest to today will choose a number to start with. And you might choose an 8 because you have 2 8s in your hand. And so you're going to say 2 8s. And you lay them down face down in the middle of the table. Okay? So, some of you are catching on to what this game is. So, then the play moves to the next person unless somebody says, prove it. Prove it might come up because somebody else in the group has 3 8s in their hand, and there's no way that Jen just laid down 2 8s on the table. So if somebody catches Jen in the lie, so to speak, Jen has to take all the cards in the pile. Or nobody might say anything and the play moves to the next person. So if you started at 8, the next person has to do 9s. After 9s, you have to do 10s.
You have to work in order.
Jack, queen, yep, you have to go in order. Jack, queen, queen, ace, 2, 3, 4, and so on around the table, okay? The object of the game, of course, is to get rid of all your cards first. Those of you that know the game, did I miss any important direction? Say it again. Okay, so when you're ready, you may begin play. Person with the birthday closest to today, go ahead and begin.
Yeah, that was an important line.
If you don't believe them, you're calling Prove It.
It's really a lot of fun for us because 2, 3 people at the table. Which maybe you have an extra. Great. So it's helpful. Have you played Skip?
Usually you would start with the person that you pick.
It's mine.
Now, we could say Prove It.
No, I would say 3 7s.
It is.
And see, I was debating there. I have to go on for that. I started, but I didn't skip it.
Neither one of them were nine.
So what happens if, okay. Right now, I don't think that's an 8.
So say prove it.
Somebody
But
were
I
to say
forget
that.
who's allowed to say prove it.
Anybody.
Anybody. Now, if you're
So,
wrong,
then I gotta take them all down.
So if you're wrong, then I would have to take them all. And Stephanie would still with the non.
That's like part of our process.
Because she said eight, so like, that's the other point of order.
Okay, so then she has to leave on 9.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
We're really nice group.
That's
Well, yeah, I know. It's really
Yeah, because she had 5. We're good. Okay.
Okay, I have
So
3
Kelly loved an 8, so nobody's calling.
Go ahead.
I'm so tempted because we have this
I know, I didn't have any 5s.
Okay, so am I out now?
No, you can
I did that right?
Yes.
Unless that's not a 10.
Right, that's, yes. So far in right now, I'm great.
Oh, so I can do that.
Yeah. 310.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You said
I mean,
10,
with
didn't you? I gotta go jack. Sorry.
Oh, I just complete that.
really only means like, wait, do what
Okay, yes,
Sorry.
Okay, go.
Now I have to do 1, 2. Because you did 8, and I'm 2.
So his wasn't.
Oh my. 2 3s.
You might want to stick with those cards. I mean, now that should be easy for you. I was going to say, you should be able to get all of it.
Sorry. She's so busy over here. She's
One king.
You can play this at the 3. Yes, it is. What are we on? 2?
Yeah. 1 6.
2 10.
Wow, you don't even. 2 7s.
2 8.
It's fine, I need more cards anyway.
3 9s.
Kings to you. Kings to you.
When someone gets all the cards in the game, like,
Oh! 1 5.
2 2s.
Because I was down to the last one. I mean, like 1 4. 1 6. 1 7. 2 9. 5.
If you're wrong,
She's like real.
One answer.
Yeah, we have to do this. Explain the whole thing.
I got 3.
2. Don't you get the cards?
Four of them. 4 kings. I got 3. Prove it.
We can go on.
We'll do 2 kings. Prove it. Prove it. You've only got 1. You're 7. 1 what?
1
I'm gonna be.
Don't say it, everybody.
I was waiting, I thought somebody had 4 9s.
That's the bad thing. Hey, once we get our set here. I know. 2 6s. We're in it right now.
1 king.
Oh, nice. Eventually it had to land on that.
Are you done now? You said 4 kings. I had
Yeah. Yeah.
She's like, let me check my style.
I swear she called me like 3 times.
I assumed you probably did not probably straight up on the 45. Yeah. The whole way from the very beginning, I was putting down even all kinds of different numbers, you know, just because.
Why not?
Yeah, why not?
iPad is turned off,
We won. I would never be allowed to ever again.
She's the best one. Have a winner? The best.
We got it.
Okay. Okay, we're gonna wrap it up.
Well, it's hard to do with 3 people. That's a lot of cards in your hand. Once we get the hang of it, it's
Do about 10 seconds to put all the cards back in the deck, back in the box, back in the basket. So, aside from taking a break and not listening to Amy and I talk, and just being able to play cards, what was the point of that? Because you're all teachers, you all know that there's always a point for everything. Okay, deciding who is truthful. I mean, you might have learned a lot about somebody, but.
To relieve some of the anxiousness that we're having right now, because I'll be honest with you, I am very overwhelmed just
anxiety, for sure. To be able to laugh with the people that you're going to be working with around you, absolutely.
There's number sense in that. You watch those cards carefully, what's been laid and what they pick up.
Counting cards, it's illegal in Vegas, but we can do it here. Okay, that's good.
I said watch the cards. Watch the cards.
Okay. Why would we have chosen that specific game? Because Amy and I didn't make up Prove It. You're doing hard work, and we are stressing the importance of knowing the content, knowing what's best for students, and we want you to be able to have those very real, seemingly calling out situations among your groups. So we purposefully had you play so that you can laugh, so that you can understand what you're doing. At the same point, we need you to have that very real opportunity to say to somebody, wait, I get what you're saying. Is that best for students? Is that really what this standard means? We need you all to be content experts. That means you're going to have to dig deeply into your standards. We had a very real conversation in the Algebra 1 group at the PD in January when they were talking about the park and the PLDs and what it looks like and how they assess rate of change on the park, rate of change for everything, linear, quadratic, and exponential. And so to make a long story short, the conversation had to be one where we were sort of challenging each other, and we need you to be challenging each other. I need to be able to come up to you and say, well, have you thought about teaching rate of change all together at the beginning of the year and not isolating linear functions? Have we thought about that? What does it look like to do that? Because that's best for students. This is a good opportunity for Amy and I to introduce the idea that we are going to be using, Washington County is going to be using Common Core identified standards. When Maryland adopted Common Core, they removed the cluster label, and we are going to put that cluster label back in because it makes sense in our belief. We've had that very real conversation with the supervisors between all of us, and so that makes sense. So we will be starting aligning our standards with the Common Core labeling system. We need you to be able to have that very real conversation. So personal feelings, put them aside because it's not personal against you. It is all for what is best for students and what is going to make the strongest curriculum for Washington County mathematics.
And please don't feel like you have to be the expert on every
Absolutely.
standard, on everything right this moment, because there is no doubt in my mind that every single person in this room, inclusive of Nicole and myself, are going to come out stronger content-based teachers from this experience because of the conversations that you're going to have with each other. And because of the just digging deeper to find an answer that maybe nobody in the group is sure of.
Mm-hmm.
So I have no doubt in my mind we will all grow from this experience. So please don't walk out of here and say, oh, I'm out, I'm not an expert at everything in here. None of us are.
And just let yourself be willing to learn. And so that begins right now. Okay, so now we're going to give you the opportunity to have your first very real experience with the people at your table. All right? We are going to give you a folder of resources, if you will, but we want you to start with the conversation. Okay? Within that book, that folder of resources, we have the NCTM, Essential Understanding by domain. Just because we're giving you these books by domain does not mean we're creating our units by domain. This is just a resource that we want to provide to you so that we can dig deeper and become more expert in that specific piece of math. So in your conversations, you might speak to with my Algebra 2 teachers, calling you out on this, and I apologize because I didn't talk to you about it beforehand, but you might be able to have that conversation and be like, you know what, I'm not strong in this area. I'm not strong in, I can't even think of one of the things, functions. I might want to dig deeper into that because I know my stats very well and I can speak to that. But in order for me to strengthen and be a better part of this team, I want to hone up on my functions and what that looks like. Or the other way around. Look, I know functions. Let me stick with it you know this, let me say with it. But we need to have a well-rounded team, and we need to be able to fill the gaps, fill the ruts, fill whatever we don't see ourselves being strong at. That's what our team, where you're sitting, that's what that looks like. So in addition to those resources, in the Parallel Task Force folder, we also have, I just went to the wrong thing. Sorry, this computer's set up differently. So in the Parallel Task Force folder, which you all got invited to, that's where this PowerPoint is linked. There are 3 folders within there that have resources for you. The articles, a bunch of articles in there that you can peruse through. Within the curriculum work, that is where you'll be uploading all of your work, so that's fairly empty right now because you haven't really started on anything, but that's why you'll have to have your devices, because that's where you'll be putting everything. And then in the math resources is another whole slew of resources from progressions documents that you might be familiar with. We just wanted to contain it into one area so that you have it at your fingertips, so to speak. So we do want to give you resources so that you can go and have something to look back on, or to research through, or to figure something out. And then, again, it just is developed by your conversation within your team. So what Amy and I are asking you to do is, we don't meet next week because it's President's Day. We have off that day. So within the next 2 weeks before our next meeting on the 22nd, we want you within your groups to choose one of the 4 books and become sort of the expert at that. Read it. It's a light read. I air quote that.
They're skinny books.
They're skinny books. They're skinny books. However, you will become much more knowledgeable just by going through these. They're spectacular. They're a great resource. I swear by them. So we want you to choose one, and we're going to sort of do a little jigsaw, if you will, where you're choosing one, a different team member choosing another, and then we can come back, and that's where we're going to start our conversation on the 22nd. All right, so at first we want you to start the conversation with your team members, the people that you just laughed with and just joked with and just called prove it on and made them pull the deck of cards. Those same team members that you're now comfortable with, we want you to start with that very real conversation. Where do you stand? Go back to your fears. What can we do to quench those fears, start putting out those fires so that we can be strong moving forward, knowing that we've got a lot to learn and we're willing to learn it. And then we want you to develop or choose the book that you're going to read. You're going to get all 4 books as a resource, but we're only asking that you come back knowledgeable on the one, and then you can have the other 3 as you're working with your teams. Okay?
In your folders, also then to help you with any of that, there's a highlighter, flags, sticky notes, okay, are all there as well. In addition to just kind of an additional resource is Jay McTie's newest book called Leading Modern Learning. So that's in there too. Nothing's being assigned from that at the moment, but there may be things along the way that if folks pose certain questions, Nicole and I might reference this as a help for you, or you're going back to your school and you're talking with other teachers about this and they have questions and you ask us, we might reference some things here. It's also available in ebook form under our Washington County Professional Development ebook site as well. But just so that you know what else is in your folder for you, this would probably be a book that you don't have to bring back and forth every time. Right. But the folder itself with everything else, we're suggesting like that's along with your device, those are the 2 things to bring with you. You might drop in a pen for yourself, but other than that, I think hopefully we've provided you with most of what you need, either on paper or electronically. So have 1, maybe 2 people from each table. Middle school folks, I have your folders here.
High school folks, I'll just bring you your folders.
Just 1 or 2 will come to me. I'll get you yours for middle school.
I'm going to give you Aaron's.
Or high school. I mean, we're like, any
I would suggest, obviously, between the three of you, that you don't need to do the geometry and finish the jigsaw piece. Okay. So you do that. Is there somebody? Yeah. Two of them.
Like argumentative. Okay. You will pick one, I will pick one, and it's just a no, I think so. My biggest well, I mean, statistics is like my favorite thing. I love statistics, but I don't. But I am not. I think objectives are standard. Yeah, like I understand statistics. I love statistics. So what are the exact algebra standards? Where do you want me to go? Yeah. So I would have to read this. I love. I'm telling you, like in a different light. Like I should find the grad school for like I love it. It's like my thing. So I'm happy to take that. I'm changing. I'm doing geometry. I mean, in content, I don't necessarily think in that, like, because I am not sure what these standards like. I think it algebra one is very unclear what they're saying.
I mean, a lot of it is.
I think we touch a lot and then we go very deep.
Right.
But yeah, I will take this. Yeah, it's algebra 1, I think, and then algebra 1 is just Any, you guys want to duke it out?
I would rather read about functions.
Sure, I'll well, have you taught this? Oh.
I mean,
Yeah, I know.
but there's some good stuff.
And then it's this would be a third night.
Flying up on your well, yeah, not right now.
Absolutely. Oh, I already crossed that bridge. No, they're
We are going to stick with
Because there isn't
like,
It worked out that I felt different than they did. That's how it worked.
If in this time, because some of you've picked your book, if you want to go ahead and start some conversation around, I know it's not till after spring break, but if you want to start conversation around particular nights of the week, locations that are central for you, that kind of thing for later on, you can go ahead and start putting that out to each other so that you can plan ahead. And the other thing that I can't remember if Nicole hit on it, I know I did say it, but just one other thing is you'll notice that what we have, and the only two things that we asked you to bring back next time are the blue folder with the books that you read, and you can tag them up or highlight them or whatever, and your device is we did not ask you to bring a bag full of previous lesson plans or previous unit plans that you've done. We are truly kind of going back to how the Common Core was designed, why it was designed the way that it was, and really starting from the ground up. And truly the lesson plans and that component are really stage 3 anyway, and that's not our focus right now. So just, and that is not to say that you all in this room don't have amazing lesson plans and things already put together, but we need to have a deep rationale for why we are doing what we're doing for those teachers who aren't able to be a part of this process right now. And with that said, too, just as we have tried to do with the original task force, we want this to be a transparent process as well. So feel free to share at a next department meeting if you want to just kind of share what we're doing, the timeline that, hey guys, before you leave for summer, you're going to have the arrangement ready to go in units. Stage 1 will be done, ready to rock and roll when you leave for summer. You won't be surprised when you come back in August. If anything, you'll be surprised with the new stuff that we add in that will help you and be a resource to you. So feel free to be transparent about the process, to invite others to ask questions about it, to bring questions here that we can make sure all of us in this room are on the same page with. That's something we've tried our best to do with the original task force as well. And there's no secrets behind this. It's just that you all have committed to come together to work as a team to develop this and work hard at it and give it your best, and we appreciate that. Nicole, do you have anything else to add or let them finish up their conversations?
I'm going to come around to Algebra to finish up the conversation with you as well. I was just talking initially, to the small groups about their books and that. Again, I just want to encourage you, it's absolutely okay to not know everything. Please don't walk out of here thinking that because you have a fear and it's not been quelched that you need to leave. No, we're going to be doing a lot of learning, and I include that in the we, because we are. We're just going to be able to have those conversations, be able to ask questions, great questions. I ask a lot of questions, and that's what we want our students to be doing as they work towards understanding. So we want to be making sure we're working towards understanding so that we can speak to this as well.
So before you leave, just a snippet of next meeting, Monday, February 22nd, 4 to 6. We will be in the auditorium, so we'll be able to spread out a little bit more, maybe create a slightly bigger tables for the couple larger groups that we have for a little bit more elbow room. But we will do something brief with some type of jigsaw type of thing with kind of what you learned, what popped out at you kind of thing from what you read, and give you a starting process for beginning that whole arrangement of standards idea and just formatting that. How do we jump into that process? And then it's a go. So we hope to not spend but an hour or less on those first two things, and then get you rolling on that process piece that will come back each Monday to revisit. As far as, are there any other just logistic questions wise? I think, I can't remember now, in the email that you received, we had mentioned that if you have your APC, you can receive renewal credits for it. You get a credit for every 15 hours. That's documented. We're documenting it through our pay sheets, so if you're somebody who wants to use that when we're finished, we'll sign your little, whatever that little form is, and get you the documentation as far as what dates you were here and the amount of time that you spent. Lindsay Dar gave us some leeway as far as which category you put your credits into. There were two options. I forget the two right now. One was a leadership option because we are asking that you're sharing, and we are saying that you're leaders in this, as well as maybe a professional development
I think it's a professional
one.
development. I think that's
So you do have options if you're like, oh, I already got my maxed out at my 3 credits for this one, but then you have an option to get credits in the other category. So that's the continuing ed piece. We will, as we go, of course you get paid the workshop pay for the Mondays that we're here, and then we will let you know as far as timing wise and things, how to submit your time to us during the like April and May when you're not physically coming here. As well as, you know, feel free to think about if you do want, or if there's a different points that come along, you know, think outside the box, and whatever you need, that's what Nicole and I are here to help brainstorm and do this together. This is new for Nicole and I as well, so we are quite literally learning and doing this with you. So we're here to be solution focused and to help you with this, but even if it's something like, hey, for this one night we'd like to come in and get your feedback, or help, if you could help us through this, you know, hurdle that we've come to, could you find us a room at CES for us to come in on a certain night and do it there? Just let us know anything like that that you might need as well, even if it's not a scheduled meeting night for everybody. Think outside the box within your own individual teams as well. So, pay, continuing ed, any other just kind of logistical?
The next meeting, when we come to the auditorium, do we still come in the way we did tonight, or should we go in the front?
Either way, you'll need to park on the side still.
But you think we should walk in the front and go sign
I would
there?
say just walk in the bottom and come up the steps. It's on the first floor. And then
It's on
just
this
go
same
by.
floor, right?
Yeah.
We just walk, okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
I would say it doesn't, I don't.
And you know why I would
Your
do
badge
that?
is your sign-in.
Yeah, because if the
Then we're gonna have
front
to
desk
sign
lady
out,
isn't
right.
there, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'd come in the bottom level like we did tonight.
Yeah. Okay.
Other logistical kind of questions, or questions about the process in and of itself? Well, feel free to stay, chat further with your team as far as next steps. This is probably the only night we're going to end early, to be honest, so use this time if you need it to get on the same page with others in your team. Let us know if you have questions, and have a wonderful evening. I don't think it's snowing yet.